Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I know that we are being joined by people from all over the world, and today we have a really interesting scope workshop. Today, I'll talk a little bit more about how you can use Cloud Code and AI-assisted development when developing scope plugins, or basically trying to understand how scope works under the hood. I also want to give a special shout out to our cohort participants, people who are now part of our AI video program. We will be starting new cohorts again in March and going forward. So there will be a lot of opportunity for others to join. So with that in mind, let me just run really quickly through a couple of slides and do some housekeeping, and then we'll jump into VS Code and Cloud Code and try to build some plugins and understand some best practices on how we can use AI-assisted development when dealing and working with scope. So as everyone knows, a lot of our communication and a lot of the first news that we are sharing is happening on Discord. So if you are watching this on YouTube, on X, on Instagram, somewhere else than Discord, obviously, go ahead, scan this QR code and join our Discord community. There's also a QR code. I don't know if it's above my finger, but it should be in the up left corner of your screens that my colleague Carlotta will be bringing on from time to time. So even sometime during the stream, if you want to join our Discord and ask some questions, you can just scan that QR code and go there. As I said, Discord is the place where we are sharing a lot of day-to-day news, updates around scope. People are also sharing their creations, so it's a really nice and warm community. So I welcome all of you and invite all of you there. And the other thing is that, as I mentioned pretty much every single time that I'm doing these workshops, Scoop is an open source project. So we encourage people to go start our repo, clone it, contribute to it. Now, instead of, for example, just forking the entire repo and trying to build some functionality, you can use plugins if you want to build more functionalities that are being added to Scope itself. So that is also going to be one of the topics that I'm covering today. I will try to talk a little bit more about the plugins, but primarily I will be focusing on experiences that are related to building with scope or for scope using different AI coding tools. In my examples, I'll be using Cloud Code. So yeah, I can basically start doing that. I will move to VS Code right now. I hope you can see my screen. If someone can confirm that you are seeing VS Code now, you can type it in Discord and I will be able to check in the chat. And I think that we should be good. You see it? Okay, that's awesome. Thank you for confirming. I got a message from Carlotta. So what I have currently here is obviously a fully empty project. So I have nothing installed here, and I'm starting from scratch. And I have my Cloud Code installed here. So a couple of ways how you can approach developing for scope or around scope by using Cloud Code. If you are talking about plugins, we recommend two approaches. One of them is obviously using our documentation. And the documentation can obviously be accessed, and I will show you that in a second. Give me one moment. So I'm using something called Context 7, which is an MCP. So for people who might not be familiar with MCPs, let me give you like a really top level overview. So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. You can almost think of it as an USB-C or a general API that connects large language models or tools based on large language models together with outside sources. So as you probably all know, when large language models like Claude or like Opus or Haiku or GPT 5.2, 3, or whatever version that you're currently using, when they're being trained, there is a certain cutoff in time. So there's a certain period after they do not know about the new things. And since we launched Scope recently, and since we launched Scope plugins even more recently, like 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, something like that. If you were just to go and ask, any of the LLMs, hey, how do I build plugins with Scope and not instructed to use our docs, it will struggle because it's not something that it has been trained on. So the one way to get around that is to be able to feed in the docs directly as a part of the context of an LLM. And one very convenient way of doing that is using an MCP called Context 7. So what Context 7 does, it basically indexes a lot of different docs, libraries, pretty much all the things that are being kept in time and something that LLMs might not be trained just on, just right on. So if I go, for example, here and type Daydream, you will see that there is our docs, our LLM's full txt file here, updated just 3 days ago. So we have this fresh context that is, that you can easily feed into Claude Code, or the same stuff will work for Codex. It will work for other development tools. So what this is the following thing. So if I go to our docs here, and if I go, for example, to scope docs, so everything you see here, including our tutorials, including the using plugins guide, developing plugins, also including the entire plugin architecture, all of those things are now part of the, they are indexed and they're ready here within the context 7. So the first step, obviously, to get those things in Claude Code to make it a part of its context is installing context 7 MCP. So now there are a bunch of different ways that you can do that. But if you go to Claude, I can just start by asking it, which MCPs it currently has access to. Now, first tip that I want to share with everyone, I don't know if this is going to work because my mic is now being shared while I'm streaming this, but I love using voice dictation while using tools like this. So what I'm going to try, I'll try to see if it will work in this case here. Hey, can you tell me to which MCPs you currently have access to? Okay, so this saves me a lot of time, and it's way more natural than just typing things, because sometimes you talk and you have those ideas coming faster than what you're just have you can type at the moment. So using a voice dictation is something that's really, really cool. The tool that I'm using here, someone already asked me, is called Mac Whisper. If you're on Windows, there is a thing called Whisper Flow, I believe. So you can use either of those. So as you can see here, I already have installed context 7. It is usually stored in settings.json, but let's see actually how it looks. So I'll go and ask Claude that. Can you tell me where this context 7 MCP is installed? Show me that file. Now, as I said, the different AI tools have different ways of how you can configure and use MCPs. In Claude Code, that is usually under the Claude and settings. I think also it is accessible here from this menu. Yeah, manage MCP servers in the console. So there are a bunch of ways how you can manage those things around. I'm using just context 7, but obviously the landscape of MCPs is huge, and you can use a ton of them. Do your research, try to check for the ones that are, how do I say it, reliable and make a lot of sense to be used. Some people even use it. There is an MCP, for example, for GitHub. So instead of typing all the git pull, push, and stuff like that, you can just vibe code your entire Git process as well. So I also encourage people to share maybe in chat some of the favorite MCPs that they are using. But in this case here, I'm just going all the way around it just to show you where this this MCP is installed. Keep in mind that you can install them to be available for everyone on the machine, or just per instance. In this case here, I believe I made this one in settings JSON, so it should be available to everyone using it here. So it is currently looking for that file. Let's give it a second. Okay, it's going to read the full file for me. And then you will see at the end of that file, there is this like the MCP configuration. Okay, it says it found it. Specifically, it's here. Okay, that's nice. It's using the npx command, so you will need to have that installed on your machine to be able to use it. As I said, for different coding tools, and I have Codex here, I think that installation of the MCPs might be slightly different, but pretty much the same process in any case. The key thing here is, more conceptually than it is about, the specific MCP, is the fact that, using the context 7, you get to pull in the latest docs. So now I'm just going to ask Claude to tell me something about scope. So I'll go ahead and do the following. Hey, now when you have MCP context 7, can you go and tell me how do I build scope plugins in Daydream? Can you teach me how is that done and walk me through the process? So use the Daydream docs. Again, it's something that would take me a little longer typing. It's super easy if I just dictated. And what you can see here is now that Claude knows that, okay, this is the MCP that I have at my disposal, and it's going to use two tools. The first tool that it uses is called resolving library ID, pretty much trying to identify from what I've just said which documentation to use. So it's resolving this library ID. I'll say, yeah, go ahead, and it will try to find it. There is a similar library called Daydreams with S at the end. It has nothing to do with us, but Claude is obviously smart enough to figure out within the context of this entire conversation to look for the right one. And now you can see that it is invoking and using the other tool, and this other tool is called Query Docs. So now it will try, no, not once it's figured out where my docs are, it will try to pull the relevant information around them. So it says, okay, project structure for scope plugin. There you go. It's actually going faster than I expected it to be. I'll expand this a little bit. It is looking into VFX pipeline class. So what it says, okay, what is a scope plugin? It tells me what scope is, and it explains the plugin is a Python package registering VAR-MOI pipelines. That's correct. The pipeline is a class that declares the configuration schema, returns processed video, shows the project structure. Pretty cool. Okay, it explains the PyProject toml and the entry point that we have here. Also explains the schema, basically how we can define our UI parameters. So it has all this full context directly for me. Now, this is one way how I can, for example, tell it how to build, tell it, I want to build a scope plugin. Can you help me around it? And it will do that for you based on the documentation and everything that we have prepared. Other way how you can enhance contextual understanding of vibe coding tools or AI assisted tools, especially in the context of Claude, is using something called skills. Now, skills are different than MCPs, and skills are set of files containing a very specific distilled knowledge about a very specific skill that you want scope to be able to, that you want to Claude to be able to do and achieve for you. And I will show you one skill that we developed, and this skill is basically helping everyone write scope plugins, almost as a tutorial kind of experience. So let me show you that. So first, I'll just ask Claude to which skill it currently has access to. Okay, can you tell me to which skills you currently have access to and what those skills are all about? And now it will check for the current configuration. It says it has access to 4 skills. Okay, so the first one is commit VC. It's one that I've built for myself. I have specific ways of how I like to create Git commits. The second one is the one that we are interested in. This is the create scope plugin, and there is also a bunch of others. So when you want to build a scope plugin, you can either use docs or you can use our create scope plugin skill. Let me show you how that skill actually looks like. I have that here, I believe. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit. So this is my repo with this scope plugin skill. And if you go here, you will see that it contains several files, right? So first one is called skill.md. We move to raw. Oh, no, didn't want to do that actually in this way. Okay, this is nice. So the front method contains this first part. It's called name. So this is how scope knows. Sorry, I keep mixing scope and Claude Code. Sorry about that. I'm now counting on your context to understand what I'm talking about. So here, this name is the name of the skill for Claude Code to understand. So that was the one after that / command, create scope plugin. Then there is description when we say interactively scaffold and build a complete Daydream scope plugin from scratch. Then what we did, we gave it a lot of information. So we told him, okay, you're an expert scope plugin developer. Your job is to guide user through building a complete working plugin. And we provided with some examples. We told him, hey, read the examples VFX packmd file, and also provided with some broader context. One thing that's interesting here is we also tell it use the ask user question. Now, this is one of the internal tools that Claude Code has, and it basically manifests itself by, and you will see it in an example. I'll show you really quickly. It will give you a couple of almost like a dialogues, asking you questions like, pipeline type, plugin name, model artifacts, UI parameters, making it like super easy for you just to walk through the entire process. Then we also, tell it a little bit more about the structure that we are expecting, different files that we wanted to generate. So all in all, giving it a really distilled knowledge, something that LLM on its own would not know. One thing that we are also doing here, I decided also to give it some broader context. It's not necessary, but it can be quite helpful by giving it some references. So I'm guiding it to our plugin user guide, our development guide, our architecture for plugins, for pipeline, and also for the scope itself, just for to make sure that it understands everything that it needs to do to be able to build a plugin for me. So now, if I switch back to VS Code, and we have this, it has this awareness of the create scope plugin. There are a couple of ways I can instantiate and work on this one. So I can just go and hit slash, and that skill should be visible here under create scope plugin. The other option would be that I just tell it, create scope plugin that does a film noir aesthetic, right? So it doesn't have to start like this. I could also give it some, instructions initially. But I wanted to do this just by starting it as a command so you can see the entire process. So obviously now it's going to ask me to read from the reference MD. Remember, that was the file that we just checked. Now it's also checking the VFX packets, trying to gather and read the reference materials, and then we will get started. So what do we want to build? Tell me about the plugin idea. Okay, let's build, no. Let's build a plugin that takes video input and turns it into a Andy Warhol kind of a pop art experience. Can you do that for me? So now it will, from this, it will try to digest and understand the kind of experience that I'm trying to build, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, it's understanding that it will need a couple of core effects. And it says, before I generate anything, let me collect a few specifics. So this is this ask user question tool that I mentioned. So it will try to guide you through this process without you having to type too many things in. So I'll just go and say, you know what, scope pop art sounds good. This should be preprocessor. No, this is a video input pipeline. No, single frame for now. And what do we do here? So it's offering me, the level of controls that I want to hear. You know what? Let's just go with, I don't even know. Let's go with this, with full control. Yeah, let it work. So now, based on all the information that it got from me, it will try and build the entire plugin for me. So I will open my Explorer here. So you can see currently I have 0 files. And pretty much in real time or close to real time, Claude Code should start building those things for me. So it will, build that TOML file with the overall project structure. Then it will go beyond that and create the pipeline and all of the other things that we needed it to do. So let's wait a little bit for this. Now, as I said, I could have completely skipped this part of using a skill, and I could just tell it, don't use skill or not even mention a skill, and just wanted to build off of the, the context 7 of the MCP information that it had. So both approaches work. You might wonder, like, when to choose which one, and that's a fair question. I would say if you want to go and build something relatively simple and do it pretty quickly, go with the skill. You can install the skill and it will guide you through this process. If you want to build something more complex, maybe something that involves inference with outside models, or you need a higher degree of control and you're feeling more comfortable around it, then you can use the docs itself. In reality, what will happen, you will probably end up building using both of those things, right? So you can combine them, right? They are not mutually exclusive. You can start by using the skill, and then it will rely on the docs to, for example, if you want to extend it. So as you can see here, it is building my Pi project TOML, scope pop art, Andy Warhol pop art with video effects. That is fine. I'll just go and say, yep, go and write this one. And you can see here now it's actually creating all these files for me as we go along. what I like about it is that it always keeps these to-dos up to date, so I know exactly what it's working on. So it's registering this. There is this hook implementation, moving this into a function, so it delays the almost like lazy loading the heavy stuff in the entry point of the init.py. So you see, I'm literally writing 0 lines of code. So this is, as I said, very friendly even to people who don't have engineering background. But what I always say, if you do have an understanding of coding and if you understand how the code generally works, it is always beneficial for you. There are numerous reasons for that. You can catch some errors easier and faster and earlier on. But also, what I like to do, I could allow it to write all these without me approving every of these edits. But here, this gives me an opportunity to quickly review the code and see what it is doing. And I see that now, for example, it's creating a couple of different effects. I see that it will build the number of colors levels per channel. This is something that's going to be rendered in the UI and so on. So I will just go ahead and hit yes, 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 pretty much allowing it to go through this entire process really quickly. In the background, what it does, yeah, applying palette, registering all these things. In the background, it does actually relatively complex math, I would say, but we can ask it, once it's done writing the code, we can ask it, how did you achieve this Andy Warhol effect or any other effect? So that's one benefit that you're getting from AI-assisted development. Don't just blindly vibe code it. Try to learn and understand all those things. So if I go here to under effects, you see that it's working on edges, it's working on posterize. It's mentioning things like tensors and obviously doing a bunch of operations with different pixels and frames. But you might be curious and want to understand how those things actually work. So once it's done with that, I will ask it to summarize this for me because I want to understand deeper. I want to understand this in more detail. So Cosmic Crafter asks, why would anyone want to learn how to do an Andy Warhol impersonation? Because I think it makes for a good demo. And I get to ask Claude to explain to me how it actually reduced the palette and did all those things. Of course, you can do a bunch of different things. The idea here is just to show you that you can go from zero to building your own plugin really, really quickly, right? So there are no lot of things that you need to jump around and try to figure out on your own. So it will also create a README file for me that I'll be able to, so Andy Warhol style, pop art, video effects for Daydream scope, parameter type, default range, all of these things are now prepared for me. So the next step that I could potentially do is I could, push this to my GitHub and then easily install and use this in scope. So it says your plugin is ready. Here's what it generated. So you remember, the entire process, the entire file tree and the scaffold for me has been generated. It explains the effect chain in order, contrast, saturation, posterizing for development, edit, and it gives me entire process of how to do it. Now this is if I'm starting from scratch. Let's say I want to build something to an existing code base that I have, and that's the next thing that I'm going to show you. So here I will move to Scope VFX. So this is one original project that I built before. It already has this skill inside of it, but this one is the one that has this chromatic aberration and VHS effect. So if I go to my GitHub and one of the GitHubs, so this is the project that I have here, right? So it currently just has, I believe, those two effects, and that is chromatic and VHS. So what I'm going to do now, I will go back to scope. Now, for reference, I'm now in a completely different directory. I'm completely different project. So the Claude code does not know that we just discussed about Andy Warhol in the previous one. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to check it again. Hey, can you tell me that you have access to context 7 MCP? Just confirm it for me, please. It should be there. I'm just, making sure that, it has it here. All right, I want you to inspect this repo. I also want you to pull the Daydream scope docs using this MCP, especially the parts about the plugins. And one thing that I would like to develop, so this current repo has chromatic and VHS plugin. I would like to add, no, not plugin, sorry, it has chromatic and VHS effect. I'm thinking about adding one additional effect. Could you suggest one effect for me to do? And this is fine, right? I know that I made a mistake while I was, dictating here. I confused the effect with the plugin, but it will still understand what I'm trying to do. So it is again invoking. Now I'm not using the skill. Now it is invoking this MCP. It will try to pull all the relevant information from our docs, from the repo itself, and hopefully it will suggest some meaningful plugin for me. So let's see, sorry, effect. It will suggest a meaningful effect for me, something that I can extend beyond the chromatic and VHS one that I already have here. So let's see how that works on. What I'm going to do after that, I will push this to my repo and I'll try to run it in scope. So it is checking the stuff that I've been working on. So yeah, in this case, as I said, we haven't invoked the pre-built skill. I just asked it to pull in the docs. While it is working on that, there is a, if you don't feel comfortable with MCPs for any reason, our docs are LLM friendly by default. So if you go to our, docs.daydream live, you can see that on every page, let's go on, developing plugins. On every page, we have this little drop down. So you can copy this page, but you can also view it as Markdown, open in ChatGPT or open in Claude. So you can, get a version of this page and then just paste it as a direct context to Claude or whatever LLM or whatever tool it is that you are using, instead of, I don't know, doing Command A, and grabbing the stuff that you might not even need. So go ahead and explore them. As I said, you have now a bunch of different options, but in general, the changes that we're making to these docs, they get pushed to context 7. So if you're using that MCP, the changes that are made here should be reflected in your environment as well. So let's go back and see what this one did. Okay, it's querying it. It's figuring out the class. Basically, I could have told it, I want you to add me, I don't know, pixelization effect or something like that. But let me see what it would suggest on its own. While it's working on this, let me check if there were some questions. Okay, so there are two tied questions. So from Cosmic Crafted, does the plugin architecture only work for post and pre-processing tools, or can it be used to alter things like prompt injection, rolling imagery, four-way styling, stuff like that? And I would also like to piggyback on this question. Curious to know if pre-processing plugin could affect post-processing plugin parameters or even parameters in the video models. Great questions. I think I covered some of that earlier in the cohort. The idea is that we will have capability for plugins to have to chain plugins together, right? So we will be able to do hands off between them and chain multiple plugins together. We already can pass, for example, prompts and changes as a part of the preprocessor and part of the post processor later on. So there's a little thing that you can do around that. Cool thing is, for example, you could ask this question directly Claude Code and ask it to check for the scope repo. I can actually do that a little bit later if you still have time for it. But we know that this current implementation of plugins is just 10 days old, and we're trying to understand what are the best use cases and how you want to build around it. So questions like this and your expectations are really beneficial for the team. So keep them coming. I'm curious to understand also how would you like to chain them. How would you like to pass arguments between them, and what's the intent that you're trying to build? Plugins are just a means to achieving your goal, one that we think might help you get there, but they are not the purpose for themselves. All right, so effect suggestions. So it's suggesting bloom and glue, halftone, barrel distortion, and other. Let me see what those are. Bright areas, bleed, halftone. I want to do this one. I have no idea what this is going to do. Let's go and check this one. So now it should create a new effect for me. It will also add this effect. I'm assuming if it does everything that I wanted it to do, it will add it to a pipeline. It will register it in schema, and later on it will be exposed to me in scope. So let's let it rip. So I'm just checking what it did before. So I checked the repo itself. I answered the question. Now it's thinking, let's expand. GPU friendly. It didn't have to be GPU friendly. I'm going to run this on a relatively decent GPU. Okay, refining implementation, writing halftone logic. I'm curious if anyone has this tendency when using parallel thinking or thinking models to expand this, just to see in the background how AI is thinking. I have this tendency. I'm curious how it works in the background. Sometimes it catches itself making an error, so that can be interesting also to see. All right, so it's going to create a halftone effect function, add config parameters to schema, write it into pipeline. All right, all the things that I just mentioned, it knows exactly where to do them. And again, back at it with to-dos. And now we'll be able to see the code changes. So again, just to recap, someone says, yep, I see that all the time. Yeah, okay, there's someone who likes to check these things. Right, so it created a new effect. So this is a completely new file called halftone newspaper.pattern effect, PyTorch GPU friendly. Entire logic, again, I don't even understand at this point. I haven't wrote a single line of this code, and I'm just saying that, yeah, go ahead. And it added this file for me, halftone.py. Now it will export it, so it's available and accessible to other parts of my entire plugin. So you can see here, it has chromatic aberration and VHS retro. Now it added halftone. I'm happy with that, so go ahead, do it. Now it's adding it to this VFX config based pipeline config. So we had these previous ones, scan line intensity line count. So these were from the CRT. Yeah, that was for the VHS CRT, and now it's adding the new one for the halftone. These are the elements that are going to be visible in the scope UI very quickly. So yep, go ahead and do this one. And I'll go and let it add. So while it's working on that one, let me answer the question. So the question was, have you played with Kimi K2.5? Not personally, but I like the fact that you can use Cloud Code's agentic harness and use the Kimi K2.5 or pretty much any other model in the background. So it should pretty much give you the same experience that you're getting here with a different brain or with a different LLM in the background without worrying about pricing or without worrying about anything that comes with using the closed source or solutions from either Anthropic or OpenAI or someone else. I believe for this particular case, because it's well documented, we have skills, we have docs, Kimi K2.5 or pretty much any frontier open source model should be able to do something like that. All right, so it did a bunch of these changes for us. It added this halftone effect, works like a classic newspaper printing. There are areas. It even asked me, do I want it to commit this? Yeah, go ahead, push this to my repo. You know the drill. So it should now, okay, it now triggered my skill that I had about very particular way of how I like my commits to be styled. So it's executing bash commands. I didn't stage anything, so it will do those things for me, as you can see here. It even proposes a commit for me. Ready to commit? Yep, let's go. Let's do it. Yep, this looks good. Arguably, this would be faster if I were just to go into terminal and do all these things myself. But I said, to myself, since I'm showing off AI-assisted development and vibe coding, I'm just going to do all of these things without me touching terminal. Do I want it to push to remote? Yep, go ahead, do that as well. Now, once it's done with that, I will go ahead. It says it's live. All right, so I haven't tested it locally. So we are going to raw dog this one. I'm going here. I'm going to my, which was it? Was this one? Scope VFX. My commit should be here now, right? There it is. Let's see. So all the things that we did now was this adding halftone.pattern effect to VFX spec. So yeah, it added it pretty much all the things that we've seen before. Okay, we can now go and spend some more time doing this, but that's not why we're here about. What I want to do, I want to get this thing in scope. So there are a couple of ways how you can do this. The easiest way, for example, if you're running this, if you build this from source and running it on your, say, Windows or Linux machine with a 4090 or a 4090 or a 5090, you can just easily, spin up the scope, go to settings here, and then just under the plugins, you can easily paste the local path and work from it that way. However, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the GitHub repo. So I will just go here and type git plus and paste the repo address here and hit install. I'm running this on rumpod. I hope my instance didn't die in the between since I started it and when I started this workshop. So let's see if it works. It's installing it. Okay, it will restart the server in background. It installed the VFX. Once it restarts the server, it will pull in the details about the plugins and reload them. All right, so it's a GPU accelerated visual effects pack for Daydream scope. Nice. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to test it. I'll switch to video. We have our cat here. So under the pipeline ID, here I have our VFX pack. So the previous version, as I said, we just have this CRT thing, and we had a version, and we had oh, I don't even remember. Oh, okay, chromatic aberration. And here we added this halftone thing. So let's see how that works. So I have VFX pack, and you can see here chromatic aberration. I will turn this one off for now. VHS retro off for now, and here's the halftone. I will turn this one on and just see how this thing works. Fingers crossed. Connecting. Now it should use this file as an input, and let's see how this. Okay, it works. That's good. So now I can, for example, decrease the dot size, and you can see that this is happening in real time. I can increase it and play with it. I don't know if you can notice it because I'm streaming, but it actually is working, which is a lot of fun. This is really cool. What is interesting, for example, now I can turn this effect off. Obviously, by turning it off and turning some others on, they will reposition themselves. But it might need a second. Work with me. Let me try it again. So this is off, chromatic aberration on. Let's try this one again from scratch. What I'm trying to demonstrate and show is that you can put these effects on top of each other, right? You can layer them, but obviously they're a little bit different depending on the ways how they are being produced. Okay, so I have my chromatic aberration here. I can increase the intensity to, if you can see it. Okay, should be more noticeable now. And I can then, for example, turn the VHS retro off, which will turn these scan lines off as well. So in the background, you should see them disappear. I can play with the wobbling effect. It's all happening a little bit slower. So I made the changes and they're not reflected just immediately. I'm blaming this on the relatively slow rumpad instance that I'm running this on. In any case, this is, as I said, a really simple way for you to build a plugin from scratch without really having a full understanding or having to know how to write every single line of code. What I can do here, so I've used this file video source as an input, but I could go ahead and do something different. Let me try that. We still have some time, so I will try and change my pipeline to long live, and I'll just hit play. It might ask me for to download it. Let me see. Maybe I have it download. Maybe I have it downloaded here. This is another one. Long live. Play. I always have to have a couple of instances of rumpad running in background just to be sure that I'll be able to show something. Yeah, this one might take a while. This one should be faster. Let's see. Oh, but I haven't installed the plugin in this one. I think I don't have my plugin installed in this one. Yeah, I have another one. I don't have this one. Let me do it. Install. What I'm trying to show you is that you can apply this. Oh, you can crash scope as well. Yeah, that's one thing that you can also do. What you can do is, instead of just applying it to, and the video that you have, either uploaded video or video from your webcam, you can apply it to stuff that is being generated by the model itself. So, for example, something that's generated by Long Live, you could still be able to apply and showcase all those effects on top of it. We have our plugin registry. So everyone who is a part of our AI video program cohort, and if you're ending up building plugins, you can publish your plugin here. I encourage you to try out a bunch of other plugins that people have already been building. We have one that's called Kaleidoscope, a really good name from Mark, who is a member of our cohort. So this is one of the first community plugins here. So I'm giving a shout out to him and encouraging others. There is a bunch of others that you can use. There is one made by Hunter about the matte refiner, so you can get this high quality matte on top of your video creations, or the one from Rafael Real Essergan. So for upscaling, I know that several people from the team worked on these things. So a bunch of these things, go ahead and explore them. Even more importantly, go ahead and publish your own. What's good is that you can always, and I suggest doing that, you can check it on GitHub, and that can be also a very valuable way for you to understand how to build plugins. You can see how other people have been building different plugins. The first plugin that we actually built was something called Scope Overworld. And if I go back to Scope, whichever version, I don't have it installed here, but Overworld is a plugin that allows you to start with an image, use a reference image, and then generate an entire 3D world off of it. So that works differently than just the effects plugins, right? So this actually develops and adds a full new pipeline. And what I can go ahead and ask Claude to tell me a little bit more about that. Hey, the things that we've been building here, they're all effects, but can you check the docs and tell me, is there a chance for me to maybe integrate with an external model or build a entirely new pipeline integrating with, I don't know, segment, anything, Model 3 or LTX or something like that? What would be the key differences between that and building stuff as these effects? Can you check the docs and tell me about it? So the reason why I'm saying this is I don't want people to think that plugins and the only things about the plugins are, just the VFX. A bunch of pre-processors, post-processors, or completely new pipelines are the things that could be built as plugins. Plugin is just a representation of those different approaches. And now it's actually checking a bunch of these things, and it will hopefully give me a meaningful answer about how we can do that, right? Declaring pipeline as a pre-processor or post-processor, that is correct, exactly. So if I go back here, you will see we have pre-processors, post-processors. I declared my VFX pack as a post-processor, meaning that it applies its effects after the frames have been generated. Another such is Rife. What does Rife do? Rife actually gives you, it extrapolates a bunch of frames. So if you're working on a GPU that is relatively not the strongest GPU and you're getting a relatively small number of FPSs, using Rife can help you with that. Let me see if there are some questions while Claude is working on this. What kind of diagnostic headers do we have in code? I want to see if this thing is doing on, I want to see what this thing is doing on my system. Can I see VRAM usage and that kind of stuff? Or the diagnostic is built into the code already? Okay, so you're talking about some kind of observability. To my knowledge, we don't have that directly, but that is a great idea for extension or something that you could code on your own. There are two ways you can do this. You can extend scope and build a utility that helps you with that. Or if you're using RunPod, you can check the utilization here. Now, arguably that is not exactly the same thing that you asked me about, but we don't have that. To my knowledge, again, we don't have that observability or that metrics exposed in scope right now. There are logs though. Yeah, I think someone is just mentioning logs. So there are logs that you can access by going here. And then if you go to report bug, you can also copy logs. Or if you're running scope locally, either on Mac or Windows or Linux, and if you were to run it locally, then in your terminal, you would be able to see a bunch of logs that are being shown off while you're currently working. So that can help. It probably is not giving you 100% of what you're looking for, But for example, if you are passing different arguments, making changes to those sliders and so on, you would see those things in logs. You would see that, a value has been sent, a value has been sent. Also, if you're using the overvolts plugin for navigating the world, you could see, which keys have been sent. So maybe that could be a way for you to intercept it and try to get it. Where were we? The last thing we were working on. Okay, yeah, we asked it, what kind of pipeline types there are in scope. And it says there is a main pipeline where we leave out this tag usage empty, appears in the main pipeline selector. That's this dropdown, supports from true. There is preprocessor and there is post-processor. And then it explains the differences between effects and model pipelines. One thing that you can also do if you want to make sure that this is really grounded in truth, and this is now, I showed you how you can use skills, and I also showed you how you can use MCPs, but I can also tell it, can you go ahead and check the current implementation of long live pipeline in the actual scope repo on my machine, and tell me how it compares to, for example, how would you go about and build SAM3 preprocessor for me. So now I'm still in this same VFX, in VFX repo, and I'm asking Claude to go and check the scope repo that I have on my machine. So it will now try and figure out. I could have, obviously give it an exact path to my scope repo, but now I just wanted to go there, check for the scope repo on my machine, and pull that context together with what I'm trying to build here. So sometimes you might want to ground your expectations, or whatever docs give you with the stuff that you are seeing in the scope itself. So that's the beauty of having scope being open source. So it's easy for you to have a clone of it on your local machine and just start building off of it. So let's check for some questions while this is building. Give me 1 second. Okay, it's graphic. Oh, one thing that I want to share before I do this, you will see, and for people who are coming from the engineering background, you will see that nowadays most of these LLMs, they're using a bunch of tools like a grep to try to figure out where the files are stored or the content of files and so on. First generations of these tools, like dating back a couple of years back, like 2 or 3 years back, they approached this very differently. And the way they approached this was they would ingest, for example, a code base into a vector database, and then they would try to do some semantic similarity and so on. And then a bunch of research and a bunch of best practices emerged that you are getting better results instead of ingesting all the code base in the context and indexing it in the vector database. But you can actually do better results if you're just using existing tools that you have, like the bash tools, like find, like grep, LSLA, whatever you need to nail down to an exact portion of the files that you need, and then use that almost as like a hot context for the moments that you need it. It's faster. It's cheaper also for the people who are building these kinds of tools, so you don't have to, reindex or you don't have to reindex your repo or code base. You don't have to keep it up to date that way. So, with just really smart orchestration of a bunch of different tools that you already have, the agents are smart enough to pull those things for you. So that's exactly what's happening here. So I did not tell it. It is not using, I don't know, our indexed database and trying to figure out how all that works. It is going to look into, it's not using the vector database and trying to do some semantic similarity. It's using a typical bash tools, trying to find, mentions of long live in a specific file or in a specific folder and so on. So it might struggle sometimes. So it's easy. Generally, it's a better practice if I would just tell it, I want you to look into that exact folder or exact repo. But the thing is, even if I'm in this repository, I could jump between the others. I've seen a question about LTX2. Let me go back. There is a pipeline. I don't know if it was visible here. Yeah, LTX2. If you have a GPU that is strong enough, or you can run it on RunPod, we have an LTX2 official plugin. So if people want to go ahead and try and install that one, you can do it from our plugins registry. Install by either clicking install in scope, or the same trick that I showed you moments ago by going view on GitHub and just pretty much copy pasting this URL and then passing it into scope. Oh, long live is finally back. Took a while. Uh, I already forgot that we were doing that, but let me try now. I will apply this VFX on the stuff that's being generated by long live. Let's see if this will work. So not just on the input video that I had it before, but now on something that the model is generating itself. Let's give it a second. There you go. Now I see my chromatic aberration on top of the stuff that model is generating. So I can turn the intensity all the way down. I can increase it to say uh, let's do something like this. It's more visible, 0.67. I can add those scan lines by turning on my VHS effect. So you can see it here. So long live is generating something, but it's giving off those retro vibes because it's now applying this VFX post processor on top of its generation. Let me see if you have any other questions that I haven't covered yet. Okay, so to summarize, to pull all these things together, I don't want you to think as of plugins as the only way. I don't want you to think that plugins are the just there for you to add visual effects like this. This is probably the easiest and simplest way to understand how the entire plugin architecture works. But obviously, you can use them for way more complex and way more interesting use cases, for implementing more complex pipelines, for SAM3, for a bunch of different integrations. Plugins can also be used for building different bridges between the apps. I know that we are working on the NDI plugin. Currently, Julie, one of our colleagues, he built a bridge between NDI bridge between Resolume and Scope. But the idea is also to have an NDI plugin that will enable better communication between the tools that are supporting NDI and the scope itself. One thing that I'm interested to see, and I would like to encourage people either in our cohort or people beyond that, in general community, we would like to see some plugins that are taking more that are taking the direction of a deeper integration between the touch designer and scope itself. So not just passing the final video output, but maybe passing some parameters and playing with a bunch of those things. So that's something that we would like to see, and we would also like to learn from your experience around building those things. Timeline keyframe plugin, yeah, that's a good idea. For example, yeah, that's something that could also work. And most of these things here that we mentioned was around video. Pipelines and plugins enable you to build different modalities. So you could, for example, go with audio reactive plugin, or you could go and play with text to speech, or merging those modalities together. So this is not reserved just to video effects or video pipelines themselves. So as I said, I showed you in a couple of examples how you can use vibe coding tools or AI assisted development, but we have in-depth docs available on our docs site about the plugin architecture, where you can really go and deep dive into the system architecture itself, understand how the plugin discovery works, plugin sources, this entire installation flow. Someone asked about the posts and endpoints. This is also something that's described here. Again, if you pull this context in with context 7, or if you pull this in with the skill, that will also work. But we understand that sometimes you want to go way deeper, something that goes beyond simpler skills or just the top level docs, and we have those things implemented and shown here. Again, really good example, really good way for you to learn and also to build off of is to check the existing plugins that we have. We have, if you go to Daydream, app.daydream.live/plugins, there is our registry. All of them have GitHub repos assigned, so you can ingest those GitHub repos and let your coding tool, let your vibe coding tools work off of them and show you how, for example, we implemented, where is it, our overworld. So overworld is a different thing. Obviously, it's not a VFX. it does whole new thing. It takes the video, it takes the image frame in, and then it generates a full world based off of it, and it runs an inference on third-party side. So you can, as I said, check this and see exactly how it works. Right? You can see the model path is waypoint one, small VA paths, all those things here. So I would encourage you to go, as I said, beyond just building, with this skill. It's a great starter point, but explore the existing things and you will have broader capabilities and understanding of what can be done. And yeah, so with this, I'm pretty much done with what I wanted to show you. I would again encourage you to try and explore building different plugins. What's interesting, and I've seen the question a moment ago. Um, can you add these functionalities on top of the existing code base? The answer is yes. So here this was arguably very simple simple thing, right? So I just added another effect on top of the existing ones, but I could go to a completely new code base, something that existing code base that does not have these effects at all, and just say that I would like to connect with Scope, I would like to build plugins around it. Can you help me with that? Again, I would point it to MCP, to Context 7, or to our docs, and it will be able to work its way around it. Now, no guarantees given, obviously, because this is in Python. If your code base is built, in something completely else and different, that likely will not work on the first go. But for most of these cases, vibe coding should get you very far away in your journey. All right. So with this, let me just check Let me check for questions one last time. If you got anything that I haven't covered. What's the context 7 URL? That's a good question. Let me show you this one. I had it open, but it's the AppStash, right? It's context7.com. The company that builds it, it's called AppStash. And then if you want to install it, there are a bunch of installation instructions here. In Claude Code, you can just do this if you're running it in your terminal, or you could just literally copy paste this in your VS Code and in your Claude Code instance in VS Code and tell it, figure this out. Your API key here thing that is mentioned, it is not necessary, but if you do it, it gives you a higher rate limits. So you could do and be fine just with this. And yeah, other IDEs and clients, so depending on what you're building, they have it for cursor, they have it for augment call, for a bunch of others, Zencoder, desktop extension itself. So yeah, they did a good job documenting all this. Cosmic Crafter says it uses Docker Hub and pull their MCP. That's verified. Yeah, that could also work. Thank you, Shiv, for pasting that link in chat. That's useful for people if they want to go ahead and install it. That's awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining this one. As I said, this was a little bit different experience that we were building this time. I encourage you to try, as I said, and incorporate Claude Code, Codex, and a bunch of different and other tools that you have at your disposal. Try building plugins, go beyond, as I said, visual effects, see how you can expose and extend scope and create and turn it into a really creative tool for you that takes inputs from different tools that generates really additional value for everyone in the creative chain. And until the next time, keep coding, keep building, and I will see you next Thursday. Thank you so much for joining. Take care and goodbye.